Welcome to One Bite is Everything, the podcast where we uncover what you don't know about your food. In the past few episodes, we have been traveling the country from farm to farm. Makes total sense, right? That's where our food comes from. And when we understand these small farms, and even the bigger ones, we understand more about our food. But this is not the only reason we need to be on this small farm journey together. Things are changing. Our food is becoming more industrialized. Small farms fill the gaps and hold food standards high. We need them. Small farms and their stories can also provide you with inspiration for non-farm related activities. In these stories, you will feel a divine sense of adaptability and resilience, an understanding of how valuable community support is, how critical it is to our environment to be a conscious consumer with sustainable resources at our fingertips, and so much more. Today, we are taking a journey to North Dakota, where Desiree Carlson of Esther's Acres shares her family's deep farming roots and how she and her husband revived their generational farm during the pandemic. From CSA challenges to raising a family on the farm, Desiree gives us a glimpse into what it means to nurture both a farm and a legacy. This small farm and others like them from across the nation are for you, providing good food, community, a better environment, and important inputs into our local and regional economies. Let's take a bite.
Our farm started back in 1900 exactly, I think. So my husband's great-great-grandfather came out here. He was a tree nurseryman, and so he got this plot of land through the Homestead Act. So he came out here, he started planting trees. I think his primary job back in Wisconsin, where he came from, was actually growing flowers. I'm not sure if he did much of that here at the time. I think it was, pretty bare and cold, and they were just trying to make it through a lot.
The Homestead Act of 1862 was a landmark law passed by the United States government that aimed to encourage westward expansion by offering free land to American citizens. Signed into law by President Abraham Lincoln, the act granted 160 acres of federal land to any adult citizen or intended citizen who agreed to live on and improve the land for at least 5 years. The key requirements included that applicants had to be at least 21 years old or the head of a household. They were required to build a dwelling and cultivate crops to demonstrate improvement of the land. After 5 years of continuous residence and improvement, the settler could file for a deed of ownership. The act was an essential factor in settling the western United States, leading to the distribution of more than 270 million acres of land. However, it also had significant impacts on Native American lands, often resulting in displacement as settlers move westward.
But he came here, and then I think the story has it that he would come here for the growing season, and then he'd go back to Wisconsin during the winter for a couple of seasons. And then eventually, when they were in Wisconsin, he got married to Esther, which is the reason for why we've named our farm Esther's Acres. So they got married, and that exact day, right after they said I do, they came to North Dakota. So she was committed, which is why when we were looking back in the history, we thought, that's so cool. She was so brave for her to leave this beautiful rolling hills of Wisconsin where her family was to move out to the empty prairie and just be this hearty woman. And a lot of people say that she was kind of a cranky old woman, but I'm like, you know what? You had to be it if you had to survive out in the middle of nowhere, this prairie woman. So that's kind of how the farm got started. And then it's been passed down to children, and they've done so many different things out here. They've had bison. They've had every single animal that you could think of.
Just as a note here, since the 1930s, the number of farms in the United States, like this one, has drastically declined. In 1935, there were around 6.8 million farms, but by 2022, this number had dropped to approximately 2 million. It's also important to note that approximately 98% of farms are family-owned, yet many struggle with succession planning. Only 30% of family farms successfully transition to the next generation, which adds a lot of weight to Desiree's story about reviving her family's farm and ensuring its sustainability for the future.
Around the 2015 time, my father-in-law, he was by himself. My husband's mother passed away from cancer, and so he retired the farm. He was of that age. He was just ready to be done, and I think there was a little bit of financial hardships as well. So he retired, got out of it, and then everyone was just living life, and nobody was really thinking about like what's going to happen to the farm next, I think. Or maybe it just wasn't at the forefront of our minds until COVID hit.
During and after the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a significant increase in farming and homesteading in the United States. About 18 million more households started gardening, driven by food security concerns and the desire for more outdoor activities. Many turned to homesteading practices like raising chickens and growing vegetables with a strong focus on sustainable living. Online communities and government programs supporting small-scale farming saw substantial growth as more Americans sought self-sufficiency and resilience. It's as if the world pausing gave people a chance to think and reflect on their values and make changes in that direction, an empowering outcome birthed from a devastating time. It's interesting to think here for a second, from that Homestead Act to a resurgence of homesteading and small-scale farming in the 2020s due to the pandemic.
So then we were living about an hour away in a small little town, and my husband is a teacher, and I'm a teacher by trade, but I was just working at a restaurant. So we were both stuck at home, you know. We were just sitting there. We were like, what are we going to do? We were renting, and we had a dog that really liked to come to the farm. So we were like, oh, let's just go visit the farm. And while we were here, we were walking around through the trees and just talking, like, what if we moved back to the farm? And you know, we had this idea of building a tiny home and like traveling and doing that kind of thing. And so we're walking through the trees, and all of a sudden there's like this rectangular open shape in the trees. Like, I kid you not, it was like it was meant to like have a house sitting right there. It was crazy. And so we're like, oh, this looks kind of nice. Like, our original thought was like, there's a big open grass area right by my father-in-law's house. And I was like, that would be fine, but sometimes you need a little bit of a distance. But this spot was perfect. There's like a big tree row in between us. And so we ended up talking with him. And a couple of months later, we were figuring out how we were going to have a house here. So we bought a house like about 100 miles away, and they just kind of picked it up from an old farmstead and moved it here. And we did like all the plumbing and everything. And it was the year of like adventure of trying to figure out how the heck we're going to get to the farm. And then so that was 2020. 2021, my husband and I actually went back to the camp that we met at, and we were working there as counselors. So we were off for a season at the farm, and we weren't really like doing anything. We had no like idea of doing farm business. We kind of were just still living our life. And so we did camp for that summer, and then I ended up getting pregnant, and then we had our daughter in that fall. I was pregnant while I was at camp. And so once we got back and I had her in the end of September, I had like this huge mindset shift. And I don't know if it was just like becoming a mother, or I was like surrounding myself with new people, or what it was, but I just started to like think, wow, I really should be paying attention to like what is going into my child's stomach. Like, you know, what am I feeding her? What am I putting onto the plate? And like, what am I teaching her? And so that's when we really were like, I think we should start farming, because I didn't want to go back to work. I wanted to be able to stay home with her. And like, that was not something I ever thought that I would want to do. My plan was that she would go to daycare after a couple of weeks, and I just had this whole plan. But yeah, that totally changed. And I was like, I don't know how to let her go to daycare. So we started doing like this homesteading thing where we got a few chickens, we got 2 bottle calves, and we had some pigs, and we were like, let's just do it for ourselves and learn how to sustain our own family. And then me being home, like we quickly learned like, oh, actually we need to make a business out of this or we can't sustain that. So then that's when we started thinking about the business side.
It's no secret that farmers have to wear many hats, from agronomist to veterinarian to labor manager to environmentalist and so on. These seem quite obvious, but the one hat that folks tend to miss is that farmers need to be really good at business and marketing. These are skills that take time and effort to learn and implement, which are also prone to trial and error if you've never been exposed to it. The business side of things is arguably the most important aspect of a farm because farms are fueled by finances. And if there is no one buying your product or enough to sustain the farm, well, there really is no farm. This just adds to the type of brilliance and resiliency it takes to be a farmer. It also takes a mentor, and Desiree found one through a local organization, not just on the farming side, but also to help her block and tackle on the business elements.
Then we started meeting monthly and she kind of walked me through like how to get into the farmers market and how to do some of that back end stuff, like getting our logo trademarked and registering our name and just all of these different steps for how to become legit. And so we did that, and that was really great. And she was so helpful, and she's still helpful. I ended up actually getting a job through that organization. And now I'm that person that's like the mentor for other farms, and it's like a whole incubator farm and everything. So it was really exciting to be a part of that. But yes, so we started with the farmers market. And actually, January of last year, we decided to launch a CSA. We made it work, but with the help of that mentor, she actually helped like fill our boxes a little bit better. And we just worked together throughout the system and throughout the whole summer season. And then after the farmers market season and our personal CSA season, we sat down together and we were like, okay, we've both done CSAs in the past. She had been a CSA farmer too. And we've realized it's a lot of work, especially when you have children too. It's just packing, harvesting, delivering everything. It adds up. And so we're like, how can we work together and maybe even include some other people? Because this was like right after farmers market season, and we were realizing there's still people that have products to sell, but now we don't have a market. So how can we figure that out?
Explain a little bit to me what's complicated about like the details of the CSA, sort of soup to nuts.
Yeah. So what's challenging about a CSA is that you are the person that's doing everything. So at the beginning of the season, you have to come up with your whole entire crop plan and have a really great crop rotation. You have to be really good about planting right after harvesting. It's not like a one-time plant and then you move on for the season. You are like constantly replanting so that you can have product throughout the whole entire summer. So like what our CSA box was that they would get about 7 to 8 different kinds of vegetables. And then we also had eggs and we had meat chickens. So it was like we were trying to do a whole diet CSA box. And so managing all of that, just like production wise, was challenging, finding the time to butcher chickens and get them wrapped and everything, get them frozen and then deliver. And it's just a lot of time management. And then we also delivered, like home delivery. I was the one delivering. I got in my car with my daughter. We brought everything to everybody's houses. So that's another huge time thing.
The CSA model has grown substantially in recent years, with over 12,500 CSA farms in the U.S. as of 2021. During the COVID-19 pandemic, CSAs saw a surge in demand, with many reporting a 200 to 300% increase in subscriptions as consumers sought local and reliable food sources. How are you finding your customers? You said you had 20 brave customers. Where did they come from?
I don't know how they found us, but it was all through social media. I think I knew maybe one or two of them before they signed up. So it was like this huge, like I had imposter syndrome going into it. Like, how did these people even trust me to like fork over this money? Because it was with a CSA model, typically you pay for it before the season even starts. And so I'm not sure if they had been like following along in the past or there just isn't a local food scene in our area. So once they saw it, they were like, oh, I'm all in, even if I don't know like entirely what it is.
So now your CSA is taking on a little bit of a different shape.
Yes. So this past fall, we tried to do a multi-farm CSA trial run. So we did 4 weeks right after the farmers market season ended. And we invited, I think there was 12 different farmers that came together and it was so cool. And the feedback was just like outstanding. Everybody loved it. We got to do it at a local bakery. So we got to have them come and pick up their boxes, which eliminated the delivering. And it also brought them into a really sweet bakery that is just so community focused. Like I think on their website, they call it like a community supported bakery. So it was really cool to see everything flowing together.
Just a quick break in today's episode. I want to share something really important with you. I am all about a small action, a really easy, no-brainer kind of action that has a big impact on small, hardworking farmers and on our communities. Every fall, the For Farmers movement invites you to nominate the farmers who matter to you, the ones where you get your best meat and eggs and produce from, the ones you see working so hard with very little thanks or acknowledgement. This is your chance. In one small action, you shine a light on them, their hard work, and make sure they know we see them. Once you nominate your farmer for a grant, your work is done. They feel appreciated, and they get the opportunity to apply for a grant for something that they know they need to take their farm to the next level. So I urge you to get on the list right now. Just go to forfarmersmovement.com/nominate. That's forfarmersmovement.com/nominate and get on the list to support your farmers with one small action when the time comes. Now, back to the show.
And then we also did a holiday box, and I'm thinking that this summer is how that's our future boxes might go. And so what happened with that was that we just asked all the producers, hey, it's Christmas time. Do you have anything that we can throw into this? So it was a little bit different than what you would get during the summer because we had some farmers that did have some storage vegetables still. So we were able to still put produce in, but it was also like caramel popcorn and, different teas and like mixes to make a cheese ball mix and then like some smoked turkey and ham and lamb and different things like that. So that was really fun. And I think like moving forward, our model is going to look like that. We're still in the stages where we're navigating that. Our goal was to launch it during CSA week, but there's just too much going on to get it
And
all
when is
figured out.
CSA week?
This coming week.
Oh, oh, goody.
Yeah.
So
So
this is like sort of like when people should be signing up for CSAs.
some
Like
people
across the
sign up.
country, is that?
Yeah, it's National CSA Week. So I think there's like a CSA coalition or something that
Mhm.
puts it on, but there are people that sometimes launch it like right away at the beginning of January and whatever, just depends on the farm. But I think it's a week that they really push it.
CSA coalitions in the United States are networks of organizations and farmers that promote and support community-supported agriculture. Their mission is to empower small farms, educate consumers about local seasonal eating, and improve access to fresh food through initiatives like sliding scale payments and food assistance programs. Operating on local and regional levels, these coalitions provide resources, training, and advocacy for sustainable farming and food equity. They help farmers grow successful CSA operations while building strong connections between consumers and local food systems. You're now mentoring other farmers. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Strengthen ND, it's actually called the Strong Farm Incubator. It's actually, there's a greenhouse down by the town is Baldwin, so it's a little bit north of Bismarck, North Dakota. It's a small, tiny little town. The greenhouse is out in the country, but it's very centralized to North Dakota and close to Bismarck, which is helpful. So through the program, Strength and ND partnered together with this greenhouse to get an incubator farm rolling. So in the future, there's plans to have a whole building that will have like a processing place, a classroom, and sell the produce that they grow. They plan to host farmers markets and stuff. But for this first year, it's mostly just helping them with land access. So they each get a plot of land that they get to come out and take care of and kind of make it their own. And then we're requiring them to be in the farmers market. And so we'll just be guiding them along, like how to be in a farmers market and all of the things like that the other lady had helped me with. It's really fun. A lot of the stuff that I do is over Zoom. And so I'm just like teaching them and getting other speakers to come in around the state and different like extension professionals that kind of know how to chat about certain topics like soil health and all of that. But it's just really, it's exciting and like it reinvigorates me, even though like I'm not that far into it. Sometimes you can get burnt out pretty quickly, but it's exciting to see people that are like just starting and they're like, oh, I'm excited about this. Like I had contemplated not doing a garden at all this year because I just was so tired from the CSA last year. And now I'm like, I got my whole seed order in because I'm like, oh, this is exciting.
Did you know that farmers who have access to a mentor are twice as likely to succeed in transitioning to a sustainable business model? This statistic reinforces the importance of Desiree's mentorship program through the Strong Farm Incubator, which supports new farmers by providing education and access to resources.
And it's just like this mindset shift, like working with other farmers has just changed my perspective on farming so much. Like if you don't work with other farmers, like you're going to get really tired, you're going to get really lonely, and just partnering with them is so helpful.
How many farmers are working in this incubator program then?
We have space to have 5 on the site, but we have opened it up to a few different like virtual ones as well that people might have access to land. They just want the educational component. So give or take, there's usually between 5 to 10 people that show up every month.
And those 5, they're ultimately looking for their own land, and this is where they're learning how to take care of it.
Yep. So we have it penciled out as a 3-year program. So the first year is just kind of like getting into it, starting your business, doing the farmers market. And then the second year we go into like a little bit more intense systems like CSA and I can't even remember what else, but just more intense. And then the third year, our goal is to like either help them find land access or say there's a farm nearby them that is retired or something, but they have land and they would like to partner with them to do that. So then it'll be like us helping them find like a new mentor type of thing. And that's huge. It might look differently, if they're doing a small market garden, it might be different, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just having those conversations.
So your grant is for egg washing machine. What's going on with that?
We ended up increasing our egg subscription overnight, almost one weekend. And so now we're like to the point where I don't actually have extra eggs to sell to like a commercial place.
U.S. per capita egg consumption has been steadily rising, reaching approximately 279 eggs per person in 2022, up from around 255 eggs per person in 2012. This growing demand provides context for Desiree's expansion of her egg business and the challenges of scaling to meet consumer needs.
So our original plan was to use the grant money to help with increasing our infrastructure for egg washing and getting like new stuff so that we could become commercially licensed, so that we could get our eggs into that local bakery that we were talking about. Because in our area, you have to have a somewhat strict egg license.
In North Dakota, farmers must obtain an egg dealer license to sell eggs produced on their property. This annual license, issued by the North Dakota Department of Agriculture for a fee of $10, requires an application detailing flock size and facilities. Regular inspections ensure compliance with food safety and sanitation standards, verifying that farms maintain clean environments and proper egg storage. License holders must also follow labeling regulations, including indicating collection dates and storing eggs between 35 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The license covers on-farm sales, farmers markets, and online sales.
So there's just a few different steps and loopholes that you have to go through to get that and obtain that. There's certain wash that you have to use and all that.
Do you think that having a commercial egg license is going to be useful for the future? You're going to scale up your egg production, or what's your story?
It's something that I think about every single day, honestly. It's this thing that I go back and forth with, whether or not I want to get to the point where I'm not selling directly to the consumer, or if I want to keep it between the consumer and us. And not just because I want to keep that relationship, but also because of the income difference. We're not a first generation farmer because this farm was here and we were handed a lot of stuff, but there was a big break and we kind of had to pull it out of retirement. So financially, like, it's hard. And so we need every extra cent that we can get. And so that's just something that we go back and forth with.
Starting a small farm can be costly. On average, it takes more than $25,000 to start a small farm in the United States. This financial reality often deters many first-time farmers, making grants and community support like what Desiree received through the For Farmers movement critical to their success.
I think it would help us scale to an extent because we could get into different places that have like a wider audience, but then it also is like a big cut at our income per dozen of eggs. And
so per dozen, you get more from me buying a dozen eggs than you do selling, 50 dozen eggs to a bakery.
Yes, with the caveat that it's nice that you're able to get rid of 50 dozen at once. It's just one drop off versus trying to manage 50 people and doing that. But we do kind of have a pretty good system down where we are meeting people at our local park and then at the Air Force Base once a week. And everybody just comes in between a 30-minute time period and picks up their stuff. And it just works. It's been really good. And I think that's why it grew so fast, is because it just was working and people were talking about it and sharing about it. And yeah, something that we're trying to figure out and figure out how we want to do that moving forward. It's really something that we struggle with. And
your egg capacity, your layers, like you went from a very small number where you were trying them out to considerably more chickens. What does your farm look like right now?
Yeah, so that year that we were in like homestead mode, we started with 4 chickens, and we had 4 pigs, we had 2 calves, and that was it. This next season, we ended up getting 50 ewes, which was our sheep, and sheep repopulate quite quickly. So they usually have twins, sometimes triplets. So that flock grew pretty quickly. Our chickens, we went from 4 chickens to 200 chickens. Imagine going from 28 eggs a week to over 1,000 eggs a week. It's a lot to manage and figure out. And then our pigs, we've got like 15 of them now. The egg thing, it was a lot, For the longest time, I was washing eggs out of our kitchen, and it was like too much, and I'd hated it. So we moved it to our barn. But now that it's winter again, it's really cold to be in our barn. So I moved it back to our house. And it's actually nice now since my daughter is a little bit older, and then she can like stay in the house and play with her toys and doesn't have to be sitting in the barn with me.
Desiree and Esther's Acres received a farmer grant from the For Farmers movement for the egg machine that we were discussing earlier. But there's more to a grant than the funding. And I noticed something about Desiree that I wanted to understand a little bit better. I wanted to ask you this. You share really generously about what's going on with the For Farmers movement, and you've even made a donation or two, which is really generous. I was just curious about that. It tweaks my heart a little bit when I see farmers who were looking to support making donations, and you're not the only one, but I just thought I'd ask you about that.
I think it all just goes back to like, we're not the only farmers out here. We can't do it all. Even just in our small, tiny little state of North Dakota, where the nearest town is like a population of 60,000, like I can't feed them all. And I need help from other farmers. And if we have multiple micro farmers, I think that's the way of the world. I want to be able to support them. I want to be able to encourage them and uplift them. Like I loved your little thank you note that you guys were doing and just kind of spreading that to other people so that they get excited and they get that little hug, I guess you could say, because it's important. Farming is difficult and sometimes you can really beat yourself up and sometimes you think like, am I crazy for doing this? Is this actually going to work out? So just getting a pat on the back, like, hey, you're doing great. No matter what you're doing, like you got this and you can figure it out. I think that's just so important. And I think that's why I've just really gravitated towards the For Farmers movement. It's just really cool what you guys are doing. It encourages you to keep moving forward, I think is the biggest, at least that's how it is for me. Like I get a letter in the mail and I'm like, oh man, that's so nice. Like, it makes me want to cry. Like, thank you. So I can just like keep going. Sometimes that's like all you really need is just like a little bit of encouragement. I mean, obviously the grants are helpful too.
Thanks for joining me and Desiree here today to explore the life of Esther's Acres, from previous generations to this one. I hope her story of balancing family life with the challenges of farming has given you new insight into the hard work and passion that go into the food we enjoy. Sometimes this story of a small farm is so much more than that. A farm that has managed to move down through generations to stop and restart is rare. Female farmers are on the rise. CSAs are becoming more a part of the fabric of our food procurement and a way for our small farmers to stay afloat. The long tail of COVID has a lot of scars, but one silver lining is the boost that thrust more new generations into farming, especially more sustainable and regenerative farming. If you're inspired to support small farms like Esther's Acres or to learn more about our work at the For Farmers Movement, visit our website at forfarmersmovement.com and subscribe to our weekly letter and reminders about grants. I'm so grateful to you for being here, and to Sonia Dillon, who helps with editing and research, and Russell Chappa, who makes everything sound so good with original music and other magic. If you'd like to be a hero, I would love for you to share this episode with friends who care about where their food comes from, or to write a review on iTunes so that other people like you can find the show. Until next time, I am your host, Dana DePrima, and I look forward to seeing you next week on One Bite is Everything.